Community members, allow me to introduce Baba Ifasanmi, who will present an introduction to ancestral healing rites and rituals.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Can everyone hear me? I can't see anybody, so I'm going to take that as a C. Sweet, thank you for the yes. I want to thank deeply. I want to thank Dr. Daniel and elders, Dr. Daniel and Becky Foster, for their wisdom. Had we not been constrained by time, I think now would be a beautiful time just to sit with all that they've shared with us, all the medicine that they've laid down for us. But given that we are constrained by time, I do want to say that some of the things that I'm going to share will be super repetitive. And we may find out that we are all coming at this thing from different angles. So I beg your patience ahead of time. I want to thank you for sacrificing your day, taking the time to be with us today to explore all that is meant to be explored. I greet not just you, but I greet all that you walk with. I want to acknowledge also, it would be remiss for me not to, my progenitors, my parents, who I believe are also with us in the audience, Edward and Cecilia Thomas. My name, as they gave it to me, is Erwin Edward Anthony Thomas. Over the course of my life, I have taken on some other names and titles, one of which being Baba, which is short for Babalao, Father of the Mysteries. And I am a priest of Ifa. Ifa is a Yoruba word, principle that translates as the wisdom of nature. I'm also a priest of a number of different Orisha, or personifications of forces of nature, such as Oshun, Shango, Olokun. Our ancestors were very wise in that they understood their connection to nature. And so they personified that connection, and they used ritual in order to connect individuals, priests, to that part of nature so that they can then keep balance. The wisdom of nature is about balance. Nature doesn't know how to lie. Nature keeps balance. We may experience it as a typhoon or a flood or this other thing, but it exists in balance. And the goal for us as parts of nature is to maintain balance within ourselves. So you can refer to me as Baba Erwin, Baba Ifasanmi Obaniyi. I have lots and lots of names, but my parents named me Erwin, which is the most sacred of them all. I am the I'm the grandson of Cleopatra Scotland and Samuel Abel, the grandson of Eunice and Andrew Thomas. I am the great grandson of Apollo Mason. My lineage is diasporic. I was born here in the United States on Turtle Island in the Northeast, specifically in New York. My parents were both from Guyana, South America, which is also the home of my grandparents. Previous to that, I am also have Arawak blood of South America, Gabonese blood from West Africa, and also Mende blood from West Africa. I am an indigenous, an initiated priest of Ifa, as I mentioned, which is in Nigeria. And when people ask me about my coming children, how am I going to, how I'm going to support them and how they identify, I'm going to say, the world belongs to you, right? I'm a diasporic African. I have pieces and parts and wisdom from a lot of different places. And it is my work to search for those stories and that medicine and to share as much of it with my children as possible, my nieces and nephews as possible, and pray that I give them the tools to be able to add on to that corpus. My focus today is, or what I was invited to speak on is the use of ancestral reverence and veneration as a technology in supporting of healing. There are some things that we talked about in prepping for this as a group. We talked about the fact that what we call mental illness has been around for some time. And this is very true, right? If everything is about balance, then what we understand mind, body, spirit in balance to be is either mental illness or physical illness, psychological imbalance, right? So as long as we've been in relationship with each other and in relationship with the earth, there are times when we are in balance, times when we're out of balance. And when you are out of balance, the body, much like the body, screams, I'm sick, I'm not doing well, gives you a cough, these things, the mind will do the same. And so it is through ancestral reverence, it's through honoring of those who have come before us that we can engage and ground ourselves in the medicine and the wisdom of those who have come before so that we can know who we are moving forward. Again, echoing the previous speakers. My intention throughout what I'm sharing will be to bring an awareness of the way in which ancestral experiences impact our current lives on multiple levels. Modern day scientists will call it epigenetics. The importance of how we inherit both the gifts and the challenges of our ancestors, and how we leave based on what we focus on imprints on those who come after us. The many ways in which we can access the wisdom of our ancestors, the importance of going beyond documentation and tangible information to connect with and acknowledge our ancestors. The exploration of various emotions that can be awakened through ancestral connections, the impact and benefits of having ancestral connection in practice, the historical context of ancestral veneration in practice, the places where those have been criminalized or interrupted, the idea of illness versus wellness or balance as a springboard to explore ancestral inheritance. And we'll also discuss some of the challenges, struggles, questions that may come up. So between this short presentation and then the longer time that we have together, I want to echo a few things from the previous speakers that I was able to take some notes on that I want you to really sit in and work with. So most indigenous practices, most stewards of the earth, those who understand their relationship to nature, we can say East versus West, but I think it's definitely a practice more than just identifying as one or the other. Work from a place of what our South African relatives call Ubuntu, this idea of I am because we are, right? Which is in complete, for me, opposition to I think, therefore I am, right? Ubuntu invites you to see yourself through other human beings. I think, therefore I am invites you to skew, manipulate, and make everything fit into what you think. So obviously, I think you can see where there will be natural challenges there. I ask you to listen today from a place of Ubuntu, right? You don't have to know everything, as is oftentimes the case in the West. You just have to be open to seeing yourself in others and building compassion in that way. And not just the others that are on the screen or that you hear from today, but seeing yourself in others who have lived previously, right? Instead of othering, looking for their humanity, looking for the places where they may have struggled and failed, or places where they may have risen and grown and done incredible things, but knowing that you too are capable. I want to make it really clear that for me, as a diasporic African, born here on Turtle Island, and with the blessing of traveling everywhere that I've been able to travel, what I've identified is that for me, the enemy, quote unquote, is the concept of supremacy. We are all children under the Creator. And so the idea that somehow the Creator created something that is supreme in their humanity, to me, is where I have some challenges. I'm gonna leave that right there. I also want to speak about the importance of having the courage to be yourself. And this ties within the Yoruba technology or cosmology to this concept we call Ori. Ori is what we call the head, right? The inner head, the thing that cannot be created or destroyed, that does not die, the divinity that lives in you. When we say namaste, I see the God in you, you see the God in me. That is the Ori space. And to have the courage to be uniquely yourself, right? Specifically through good and gentle character, so you can be with others, right? Is a degree of vulnerability and self-awareness and knowing that is often not supported in our culture, and that it is imperative that we honor and we celebrate so that we can focus on growth. Because I am not here to be anyone other than myself. My purpose is my purpose alone. My destiny, the thing I am destined to be and do, is mine alone. If I compare myself to others or try to be someone else, I will fail. What is unique about human psyche is that we are the only beings in nature that want to be something other than what we are. The tree wants to be the tree, the fox wants to be the fox, the cloud wants to be the cloud, not trying to be anything else. It is only humans who don't want to accept the fullness of our experience. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be seen as that. I don't want to understand that. I don't want to, right? The things that we're not then creates a fear of being who we are. I also want us to sit in the knowing that what we understand to be the Abrahamic faiths, traditions, one of them being Christianity, develops particular archetypes. And the two prominent archetypes within Christianity are the Savior and the saved. I'm going to trust that you can follow that through in all the potential ways, right? You're either looking to be saved, or saving someone. There are many ways of being in the world outside of being the Savior and being saved. But the thing that I will encourage you throughout this day today to look at is this concept that because you have a unique destiny, you are here to quote unquote save yourself, right? You are here to have influence on those who have come before you and set a blueprint for those who come after you, but no one is coming from anywhere to do it for you. I also want to amplify this idea that we must lean into and head into the gray in these times, as Dr. Foster mentioned, right? It is not all this, it is not all that, right? There is something in between that allows us to find balance and move forward. And we are not alone in this, right? We are in a time where we are all struggling towards growth. We are clear what we don't want, right? And we get to co-create what it is that we do want. And the blueprint is oftentimes in those who have come before us. So, is everybody still with me? It's weird just sort of speaking into the Zoom void. All right, cool. So, sweet, thank you very much. I may ask for some affirmation every once in a while. Thank you. So I'm going to start from maybe a familiarity with us as far as science, agreed upon science, because for the record, Ifa, especially as I have been taught it by my teacher, my Aluo, Babafemi Fayemi of the Obafemi Institute for the Divine Study of Ifa, of whom I am a student of Ifa, a priest of Ifa. And it's science. We're not talking about religion as much as we're talking about science, right? We're not talking about religion as much as we're talking about spirituality. So the CDC defines epigenetics as the study of our behaviors and environment that can cause changes that affect the way that our genes work. The study of how our behavior and environment can cause changes that affect the way our genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads that DNA sequence. So we all know that we were given our eyes and our nose and our stature and our walk from our ancestors. That is clear, right? They've come before us. But epigenetics speaks that it is what your great-grandparents did, how they related to their environment, that has a great influence on the way in which you read your DNA, right? Which gives us incredible power to influence those who come before us and the impact of those who influence those who come after us and the impact of those who've come before us. What you do now will affect your great-great-grandchildren's bodies, minds, and spirits, how they read their genetic code. It's not a might, it's not a could, it's not a should, it will, right? They will know the ways of thriving through culture and ritual, or they will inherit the fear of being their authentic self, depending on what code you leave them with. They will inherit the practice of either sitting and listening, taking on the medicine, or they will inherit the practice of searching outside of themselves for value and meaning, oftentimes in a very in a culture and community and environment that is enemy to their intrinsic spiritual selves. Their blueprint will be based on what we are doing and what you choose to do right now. So all of it matters. Just as our blueprint comes from those who've come before us. This is a critical piece when we're thinking about ancestral reverence. Because we're not talking about, first of all, we're not talking about ancestral worship. I don't know what that is, right? But I do know that reverence is about honoring those who've come before you, those who made sacrifices, who fed you before you could feed yourself, who named you before you could name yourself, who kept you safe, who protected you so that you can get to a place so that you can buck against them, right? So ancestral veneration or ancestral reverence is oftentimes found in all indigenous, in many, I've yet to find an indigenous culture that does not honor it. And if you have a belly button, you have ancestors. Within the Yoruba tradition, within the Ifa tradition of West Africa, it is a matriarchal line. So what we're clear about is that you are mama's baby and daddy's maybe, right? We're clear that at some point, a particular date and time, you were connected through your umbilical cord to your mother. And so we're clear about that, right? And so this connection comes with all that you needed. For 9 months, you were hibernating, you were incubating, you were developing, you were growing inside of the wonderful thing that is woman, right? Every single one of us. And from that space, you get a lot of wisdom, right? You get who you are, whose you are. There's a phrase that says, we thank our fathers for bringing us, and we thank our mothers for keeping us, right? Because that is the soil in which we grow, right? Within Ifa, ancestral reverence is 1/3 of a 3-part, what do we call it? Intersection from which our destiny, our purpose exudes. So when you come, for instance, to a priest, and you sit on the mat for a reading, no matter what the modality may be, there are 3 points that they are checking for which to get the energy diagnostic of how you're doing in relationship to your purpose and destiny. So divination is ultimately a way to guide you through the intersections of your life, right? When you have decisions to make, and make sure that you're aligning with your purpose. But the 3 sections that we check on or the 3 intersections that we get this energy from, or this diagnostic from, are your divine self, as we mentioned before, your ori, the thing that makes you uniquely you, your ancestry, the blood, the DNA that runs through your veins, and your environment. It's at the intersection of these 3 spaces that we can get a diagnostic of where you are, and how to move forward in the best way possible. And we use a technology based on a very scientific and mathematical equation called ODU. ODU are binary patterns that are actually the basis for computer ones and zeros, computer language. These binary patterns is for those mathematicians out there, it's a base 4 equation, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. So much like when you go and buy a new phone and you have gigs on your phone, there is a technology that our ancestors were brilliant enough to encapsulate. There are 256 possible patterns that exist in this particular energy language. And each of these 256 patterns holds thousands of verses of medicine and wisdom and cultural practices, and it's the oldest container for information that I'm familiar with. And the second of these 256 patterns is called Oyeku Meji. Oyeku Meji. Now, the first one is called Eji Ogbe, or Ogbe Meji. The first one is known as the masculine principle, and the second one is known as the feminine principle. The first one is represented by 8 lines. As I mentioned before, it's a base 4 equation of single lines. So light, 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 light. The second one, Oyeku Meji, 8 positions, but they're written as dark, 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 dark. So it's the difference between 1 and 0 in computer language, right? Oyeku Meji signifies femininity. It signifies darkness and unhappiness, and warns of death, sickness, worries, and bad omens, yet also carries with it the solution for all of these problems, right? It signifies darkness, unhappiness, sickness, death, but also carries with it the solution for all of these problems. A client that is out of alignment with their purpose and destiny encourages or has blockages. The client that is in alignment has strong ancestral support. So what we understand is this primordial, primary feminine energy carries both illness and the medicine to heal illness, right? It teaches us to listen and respect the views of our elders. It teaches us to honor ancestors regularly, not every once in a while, not just when you need something, right? It teaches us, as the word Oyeku is an liaison of Oye, which means intelligence, insight, knowledge, understanding, the capacity to perceive, right? And it also introduces death. Now, death is not, we're not talking about death from a scary perspective. We're talking about the death that we talk about, that we all have in our experience. As soon as you are born, you begin to expire. The one thing that is clear is that you will die. None of us will put here to stay physically, right? So death as part of nature, as an opportunity to be reborn, to have new growth and new beginnings. So it introduces to us that concept. It's also known, Oyeku Meji, as the averter of death, right? It carries the spirit of the mother of death. At the end of every day, the sun dies, to be reborn again the next day. Elementally, Oyeku Meji represents water and all of its transformative powers, the thing that allows us to give birth to new things. It directionally, it represents the West. Again, the place that the sun goes to retire. My parents are wonderful, amazing people. And they both would, growing up, have particular sayings that they would say to try to quiet me because I was full of questions. My mother would always say, tomorrow's another day, right? At the end of the day, when I want to do more, I want to stay up more, I want to do more things, tomorrow is another day, right? Knowing that today must die so that tomorrow can be reborn. So Oyeku Meji teaches us that in order to get the medicine of any illness or any sickness, right, it is important that we embrace death, that we embrace transformation. It's also critical that we embrace the wisdom of our ancestors, that we go back from which we come, our mothers. This is not to say that our fathers are not of great value, right? But it is the measurement and how you relate to the feminine, the women in your life, the women in your life with authority, the women who nurtured you, took care of you before you could advocate for yourself. No matter how old you get, you can measure how you are doing based on your relationship to the feminine. And this is what Ifa teaches us. And this is what ancestral reverence allows us to develop and to heal. And we do it in a very real way. This isn't just theoretical, right? And so now I'm gonna get down to the brass tacks of it all. Within Ifa, we understand that because the ancestors are real energy, those who've come before us, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed from one form to another, that when the love that you have for your children, for your nieces, your nephews, the love that your grandparents had for you does not die when their physical body dies or transitions, right? So we build what we call an altar to serve as a space for our psyche to remember and to focus energy, and to have relationship with that energy. And so there are some basic ingredients that make up an ancestral altar. One of them is a white cloth. White being a reflective in the color theory, a reflective color versus, for instance, darker or black cloths, which absorb. Right, so we have this white reflective cloth. We have the elements. We have a candle of some sort. We have, hold on, excuse me, 1 second. I just got a direct message. So yes, Mr. Winston Jege, I am in fact a child or a grandchild of Victoria. You know my parents very well. It's an honor to be on this space with you because I've heard about you my whole life and I'm super excited to meet you. So you guys will be introduced to to our culture keeper and percussionist a little later, but he is a family friend that I've never been able to meet, and it's super exciting, super exciting. Okay, sorry for the interruption. All right. So yes, so you have the white cloth, you have fire, you have a candle, you have earth, plant of some sort, oftentimes flowers as well. You have water, if we know about water, and you have the names or the pictures of those who've come before you, right? And you arrange this in a way that is aesthetically beautiful for you. There's a particular thing that I want you to hold on to. No one can tell you how to interact with your ancestors. So you need to trust and develop a trusting of your intuition of what feels right? Spirit speaks through signs and symbols in nature. Some 90% of the messages that came through the book we call the Bible comes through dreams, signs, and symbols, right? So spirit isn't necessarily always talking to you all the time. There are some people who are mediums, right? Who get, messages and all the things, but it's oftentimes your ancestors will speak to you through dreams, through animals showing up randomly, through synchronistic events. Dr. Wade Nobles talks about our relationship to spirit is by nature phenomenological, right? Which means it comes out of phenomena. Last year or 2 years ago, I was reminded that it was my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who I was very close to, that it was her birthday, because the thing that we watched together often, nobody laugh at me, which was Sesame Street. We had a love for Elmo, specifically that character. The music of Sesame Street and the sound of the particular songs that Elmo would sing kept coming into my consciousness. And I couldn't figure out why. It was very strange. It was on NPR. There was all these things, right? And then I stopped and I looked at the date and I was like, oh, it's Granny's birthday. So through phenomenological acts, seemingly coincidental things, if I slow down long enough, I'm getting pointed towards my ancestors, and not just any ancestors. This is my favorite human ever, right? And so we come to this altar regularly with prayer, with positive intent, with food. Food is very important, right? Because they fed us before we could feed ourselves. They taught us the foods that were good for us. Sometimes, to be fair, they also ate what they had to eat. So it wasn't always the healthiest, but we still sacrifice, because it's not about us, it's about them. We sacrifice and maybe cook some things that we don't eat ourselves, but we cook it for them, right? So that they know that they are welcome. We call their names. We call their names often so that they're never forgotten. We call their attributes, the things that they were known for, whether it be education, whether it be nursing, whether it be they used to dig for gold, whether they were miners, whether they were farmers. We call upon their attributes. This does a number of things. One, it keeps their memory alive. It also teaches those who are watching us honoring this ancestral altar, our children. They keep the culture of who we are and the gifts that we walk with as a people alive, right? So the ancestral altar serves as a magnet for spirit to come, for ancestors to come and support us and to hear our prayers. There's a few things that are really important here. One, we tend to call on our honorable ancestors, because as we know, as in life and in death, not everybody was honorable. Some people were pained. Some people went through some things that that caused them to be very not nice people. And so we call specifically on our honorable ancestors, those who can support us where we are right now. There's other works that we can do for those who need support, but right now let's just focus on the honorable ancestors. And the second piece that is important to hold on to is ancestors aren't interested in you individually. Maybe difficult to swallow, but because we share their blood, we share their body, we share their mind, we share their wisdom, ancestors want to know how everybody's doing. Right? So when you go to your ancestor altar, they want to know how your cousin you haven't talked to in a long time because they said something that you couldn't heal from, right? Ancestors are not interested in you specifically individually. They can see the places where you need to grow, the things that you need to release, the challenges that are coming, and they can see that that's happening, and the reason those challenges are there, or the reason you're not talking to so-and-so family member, doesn't actually have anything to do with you two specifically. The wound or the pain or the thing that hurt you that made you feel like you can't get over it happened potentially generations before. So if you're looking for medicine, if you're looking for answers for something, you're not necessarily going to go to the youngest person in a family or a village or a community to get the wisdom of a place. You're going to go to the elders. Right? And if not living elders, you're going to go to the ancestors of those people. Your ancestors know at what point there was harm, great harm done that caused people to become the hurt people that hurt people. And so we go to them, acknowledge them, give them light, give them food, give them support, give them remembrance, and ask them to intercede in healing the whole bloodline. It's a very powerful experience. And I'll talk more in my second laterness about specific examples of ways where I've been able to support within my own family, but also support and counsel clients through building ancestral altars, honoring those ancestors, performing particular rituals, including libations, that have opened space for phenomenological healing. So real quick, I want to see if there's any questions. Thus far, I went a lot of different places. I was really inspired by Dr. Daniel and Becky Foster. So sorry about that. Any questions? Points of clarification? Critiques? No? We're good? Lovely. I want to invite you again to keep sipping on your water.
I am looking forward for your follow-up, especially on the epigenetic and the neoplasticity. I'm sorry for the background noise.
No stress. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I want to thank those who invited me to this space. I feel really honored to be able to share. I want to big up Guyana. I want to big up South Africa. I want to big up Turtle Island and all the people that are here and represented in all that you walk with. Thank you. I look forward to the.
I have a question, if I may.
Please.
I wanted to ask, is there any physical locations that people can go to? How do you recognize where to go to worship with your ancestors, or to be as a group physically? You know, like I'm a Catholic, raised and born Catholic, so I know I have the church I can go to pray, right?
Right.
So now I want to find out more about my ancestors and how my ancestors were praying, and to come back to my roots. So is there in the future any plans to build physical locations where people can come to in the open and be able to worship?
So what's beautiful about indigenous technologies is that you can build your own quote unquote personal or family ancestral altar, right? And it begins there. You don't need anybody's permission. I can literally send you a one-pager about how to do that. It's a 13-day ritual that's pretty basic. And then it's also important to remember that our ancestors are not just the people, right? Because we are connected to nature, the land and location is also a relative of ours. And so for me, for instance, going back to South America, to Guyana, is a way of honoring my ancestors, right? Walking the roads that they walked, eating the foods that they ate, swimming in the waters that they swam in. And so knowing from which your ancestors, from which you come, right? The land, the physical land is one way to do it. Because you can't separate a people from its land, even if people, colonists try to take it. You can always go back and reclaim. And we'll talk more in my second part about the ways in which you can activate land through libation, through making offerings. So no, there isn't necessarily a single place, but you can build spaces for you and your family, for you and your people that have been, and imbue it with meaning as long as you're consistent with honoring. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes.
Just really quick, I wanted to commend you on tying in Ifa with the psychology, and I'm hoping, I think I have your number. I need to try to get it again. I am interested in even, because I hesitate sometimes with libation. Well, I don't really hesitate, but it came to my mind that, well, you don't call everybody's name. So when you mentioned something about doing work around people who have passed, their ancestors, but they were maybe not the best of people, or they may need some help on the other side or something like that. I'm very interested in that. As well as we did some work at one of the streets in Missouri that had some blood in the street, somebody saw spirit, but being able to do some cleansing of the land and the waters and where we walk. And so I don't know, do you have a website or something where we can connect and talk about some of those issues that aren't, and I know a little bit about Ifa, but I don't know people who talk about how to work with people when they cross over.
Absolutely. And if I don't know, as I remain a student, I'm in my 12th year, I can definitely put you in contact with my elders.
And I haven't studied it. It just fell upon me. One day I found out that people on the other side needed help. So, some things just kind of come. They just kind of like help me. So
they need you,
right,
and you need them.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we may have time for one more question, potentially. Okay. Cool. Well, there it is. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to hearing, everything that follows.
Thank you, Baba.